Good day and welcome to Building Client Relationships, an e-learning module for HP Live webinars. Today we'll be looking at how to build successful client relationships. As part of the agenda, we'll go through a short introduction. We'll go to understanding the client's business, to understand the client, how to gather and organize information. Once we have that information, we need to build the relationship. And in conclusion, we'll review all the techniques that we have learned in the presentation. Let's have a look at the objectives today. We need to demonstrate a good understanding of the client's business and organization, recognize how and when to work with people in the organization, be able to gather information about the client, organize it efficiently, and share it appropriately, as well as how to build rapport with clients. This is the presentation's framework: understanding the client's business, understand the client, gather and organize information, and build the relationship. The first aspect we'll be looking at is building the client's relationship. Michael Porter's 5 forces model can be used to understand the external and internal forces that affect a business. Each of the 5 forces has a positive and a negative aspect. A strong supplier bargaining position means that suppliers can demand high prices and dictate terms. If they are in a weak position, they have to accept lower prices. A strong client bargaining power means that clients have a wide range of choices and can demand price reductions or additional services at no or low cost. If they're in a weak position, they have to pay premium prices. A strong threat of new entrants means that the cost of entry into the market is very low or the technology is evolving rapidly. A weak threat means that there is less competition. A high threat of substitute products means that the product or service can be duplicated easily by the competitors. A low threat of substitute products means that this is difficult to duplicate. The degree of competitive rivalry within an industry is a major indicator of the competitiveness of the industry. The 5 forces model is only a starting point. It is often used in conjunction with a SWOT analysis, SWOT standing for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. When we look at a business model canvas, it affects business objectives and also its business functional strategies. This is a framework for organizing and analyzing the client's business model. There are 2 main areas: cost structure and revenue streams. Cost structure includes the cost of key partners, key activities, which are the activities necessary to execute the business model. Key resources are the resources for the personnel, equipment, and facilities. A company's value proposition is the products and services that represent value for a specific customer segment. The value proposition spans both cost structure and revenue streams. This is because it is both a source of revenue or funding and a cost. Revenue streams are the ways in which a company makes money. Customer relationships are the links that a company establishes between itself and its different customer segments. Channels are the means by which a company delivers products and services to its customer. This is also known as route to market. Finally, customer segments are the company's target markets. These could be particular industries or demographics such as age groups or income levels. This business model canvas is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 3.0 license, which allows it to be used for non-commercial purposes such as this presentation. Using this business model, analyze a particular client of yours or a customer of yours and see if you can fill in the blanks as we work along. We move into understanding the client. This is the second part of the Building Client Relationships framework. One of the first things we need to do is to identify our stakeholders. A stakeholder is any person, group, or entity that can influence a client's resources, attention, or output, or who is affected by its output. The key to success for any client relationship or service is to satisfy important stakeholders according to their definition of success. Ask yourself the question, what can happen if you deal with the client in isolation, ignoring the stakeholders that influence the client? A stakeholder map is a useful tool for identifying the key people and their roles. This is also a useful tool to use with your client. This ensures that both you and the client have a shared understanding of the stakeholder roles, issues, and concerns. Then there is also a clear understanding of the implications of the service for all stakeholders. The stakeholder map provides a graphic image of the stakeholders and their relationships to the client and the service, provides a high-level view of the stakeholders, reflects the stakeholders' connections to the client, and the service illustrates relationships between stakeholders. This is just one of the various tools that one can use to map the stakeholder analysis. So there are a couple of things that we need to know when we analyze the stakeholders. We need the information, so identify who they are and their related information. We need to identify their role and responsibility, their influence within the organization and the impact that they have, their issues and concerns, how critical these issues and concerns are to stakeholders. What are the stakeholders' needs? Identify the need of their stakeholder relative to the client as well as relative to the service, and their relationships and influences. Who does the stakeholder or stakeholder group influence? Who influences the stakeholder, and how important is this to the client? Again, using this tool, identify a typical client. Then identify all the stakeholders who affect the client relationship directly or indirectly. The sponsors who can influence the success or failure of the client relationship or service and who have an interest in the success or failure. The team members who work with you to provide a service to the client. Other internal groups or individuals in your organization who are involved. External groups or individuals who either provide inputs or support, who are dependent on outputs or support. Let's look at best practices for interacting with stakeholders. Think to yourself, what are the best ways to interact with the different types of stakeholders? Ask yourself what the key success factors are for successful communication with the stakeholders. Now we're going to gather and organize information. As we can see, this is the third aspect of building client relationships framework. This slide is a template. Use this template to list the stakeholders. You can add, take off, or change stakeholders as you find out more about the client and the stakeholders. For each stakeholder, you need to identify their name and the group to which a stakeholder belongs. Note the level of the stakeholder. Are they individual contributors, team leaders, managers, or executives? Their roles and responsibilities, their issues and concerns, their needs, and their relationship and importance to the client and to the service. Ask yourself, how do you normally obtain this type of information? How do you normally record and organize the information that you have about a client? How do you normally record and organize information about other stakeholders? Now let's look at the methods we suggest. Some of the ways that you can obtain information from the client are exchanges of email between yourself and the client, online chat or data that the client has filled in online. Interviews can be formal or informal. Prepare questions beforehand and make sure that there is a way to document the answers. Focus groups are a way to learn about the expectations and attitudes of stakeholders. You can guide the group by asking for their reactions to certain topics. Facilitated workshops are a good way of defining requirements with a cross-functional group of stakeholders. Other methods of gathering information are questionnaires and surveys, your own first-hand observations, attending client meetings which provide you with current information. Define a clear purpose for each client interview and each meeting for gathering information. Plan and list your questions in advance. This focuses the discussion and also makes the best use of your time as well as the client's time. Follow a structured process by starting with open questions. Obtain a broader view with context questions. Clarify and obtain specifics with probing questions. Assessing alternatives with option questions. And confirming with closed questions. It is also possible to build the client's awareness and understanding by asking questions. Make sure to apply active listening techniques. To improve communication and verify mutual understanding, use active listening techniques. A widely used model for active listening is LEAPS. Listen, empathize, ask, paraphrase, and summarize. This means listen with an open mind, hear the words, interpret the meaning, and act upon the words. Empathize, but do not confuse empathy with sympathy. Empathy is seeing the other person's viewpoint and expressing understanding. Sympathy implies an emotional agreement. You do not have to agree with someone to express understanding of their point of view. Ask is for seeking information and opinions and to clarify your own understanding. Paraphrase, to express the message in different words and to confirm your correct understanding. Summarize, condense what has been said and put it into simple statements that focus on the key points. Be brief and concise. Interpretation is affected by personal images, assumptions, perceptions, stereotypes, biases, and experiences. These are results of the filters placed on interpretation by our own background and experiences. These images, assumptions, perceptions, stereotypes, and biases affect the meaning that we extract from the verbal and written messages that we receive. Some of the barriers to correct interpretation are assumption, which is when we accept something as being true without receiving proof of it. Bias, when we have a prejudice or a predisposition. Image, a likeness or a person or thing that resembles another. Perception, an impression based on one's understanding of something. Stereotype, a person or thing that conforms to an unjustifiably fixed mental picture. These assumptions, biases, images, perceptions, and stereotypes are based on a worldview that results from each person's background, culture, and experience. It's about someone only to find later on that they were incorrect. Have you felt that someone made incorrect assumptions about you? Just 2 points to think about. Communication and transparency are important aspects of client relationship. However, it is equally important to respect confidentiality, that of the client, your team, and the stakeholders who provide you with information and support. Share knowledge and information judiciously. Consider need to know, who needs to know, and what they need to know. Ensure that you share facts and substantiated opinions and do not share speculations. Recognize the difference between public knowledge and private knowledge. Some private knowledge obtained in interviews with clients should not be attributed to their client if it is being told to you in confidence. Respect the client's confidentiality if you are told that something is confidential. Respect your team's confidentiality and do not talk about individual team members to the client. Respect third-party confidentiality. Protect your organization's assets. Consider if you have policies regarding client confidentiality. If so, what are the policies? A moment for reflection. What are the best ways to gather and record stakeholder information? Take some time to think about it and to see how you can perhaps rectify what you've been doing incorrectly or improve upon what you have been doing. Here we're going to build the relationship. As we can see, this is the last pillar in building client relationships framework. The dictionary definition of rapport is relation marked by harmony and accord. The word rapport is of French origin, and the final T in the word is not pronounced. Building rapport is an important aspect of the client relationship. The more rapport we have with someone, the more likely They are to listen and to be influenced by us. Rapport focuses on building a harmonious relationship that is based on trust and mutual respect. You can ensure mutual understanding by sharing communication with your client. Techniques for sharing two-way communication are questioning and listening. Rapport building is dependent on effective communication. You also need to give your full attention to the client. In any interaction with the client, you establish rapport by stating a positive intention and maintaining a positive tone. This does not mean diminishing or belittling any negative statements that the client makes. Instead, it means exploring positives by asking questions, remaining objective, and generating positive energy. Rapport is based on trust. An important ingredient of trust is honesty and sincerity. You should demonstrate sincerity in wanting to help by responding positively to any request for support or assistance. This does not mean that you necessarily agree to fulfill any request, particularly if it is out of scope of the service or project that you are providing the client. It does mean that you use a positive tone and express your understanding. Finally, you do need to show empathy for the client's challenges. Empathy is defined as the action of understanding, of being aware, of being sensitive to. You might not agree with the client's perceived challenges or might feel that they are being exaggerated. However, it is important to listen and understand. It is not necessary to agree or sympathize. Trust is essential for building rapport. Trust is a fragile element that can take years to build. Unfortunately, it can be broken easily. Small discourtesies, disrespect, and dishonesty can make significant cracks that are difficult to repair. Trust can also be destroyed by insincere attempts to build rapport. If time has been spent in building rapport, one small crack in trust should not make the relationship break down. Repeated actions that undermine trust can eventually destroy the relationship, however. Equally important is the way in which you interact with the client. Some of the factors are what you say, how you say it, and how you show your real feelings. Body language and facial expressions in face-to-face interactions show your real feelings much more than the words that you use. Often people are unaware that their body language or facial expressions show their real feelings and may contradict the impression that they are trying to achieve by the words they are using. How you demonstrate respect, paying attention, is a way to demonstrate respect. Another way is to accept the client's opinion and point of view, even if you do not agree. These key elements are all culturally sensitive. What is desirable or acceptable in one culture might be undesirable or offensive in another. This applies to what you say, how you say it, your body language, and how you pay attention. This slide shows a tree as a metaphor for a person's style, approach, and attitudes. The roots of the tree are nourished by each person's culture, geography, age, and experience. What are your styles of communicating and making decisions? How do you think that they are influenced by your roots? What are your approaches to completing tasks and knowledge? How do you think that they are influenced by your roots? What are your attitudes towards conflict and disclosure? How do you think that these are influenced by your roots? Understanding and knowing yourself is the first step toward understanding and knowing clients with different roots. Ask yourself, what are some ways to build a relationship with a client? What do you find most challenging when trying to build a relationship with a client? And what are 3 differences with 3 different types of clients? Take some time to reflect on this and also look at your current situation. Right, let's have a look at what we've done. We've looked at the key learning points from the 4 aspects of building a client relationship, which are understand the client's business, understand the client, gather and organize information, and build the relationship. How will you apply this in your own relationships with clients? This leads us to the action plan. Review the techniques that we've discussed in this presentation and how they are applied. Reflect on your own client relationship skills. Write down 3 to 5 strengths. Write down 2 or 3 techniques that could be improved. Note any actions that you will take to improve your techniques. And once again, follow up to ensure that you are doing what you said you will do. It seems essential in relationships and all tasks that we concentrate on what is most significant and important. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on building client relationships. Good luck in your business building effective client relationships.